They built a bridge across my land without ever saying a single word to me. The first time I saw it, it was already complete, clean, polished, like it had always belonged there. Like I was the only person who somehow missed the announcement. And the strangest part wasn't even the bridge itself. It was the fact that a week later, they planned a grand opening, as if this was some kind of gift to the neighborhood, instead of something quietly taken from the person who actually owned the ground beneath it. I didn't react right away, not because I hadn't noticed, but because I needed to understand how something like that even happens. How a group of people collectively decides that a boundary just doesn't matter anymore. My property sits along the edge of a narrow ravine just outside a town called Overreach. It used to be nothing more than scattered farmland and tree lines, until developers began carving it into neat rows of houses with names like Cedar View and Willow Bend. Even though half the trees were cleared to make space for driveways and sidewalks, my land was one of the few pieces left untouched, partly because the terrain drops sharply into a rocky cut that slices through the area, and partly because I never had any reason to sell. I like the quiet, the way the wind moves differently down there, the way the town feels just a little farther away than it actually is. That ravine wasn't just scenery. It was a natural divider. On one side, the newer developments with their identical mailboxes and paved walkways. On the other, older properties like mine, spaced out and a little rougher around the edges. There was never a crossing. If you lived in Cedar View and wanted to get to the grocery store on the other side, you had to drive the long way around. It added 10 minutes, maybe 15 if traffic got bad near the main road. People complained, sure, but it was one of those things everyone accepted because that's just how the land was shaped. Or at least, that's what I thought. I travel a lot for work. Nothing glamorous. Just contract jobs that take me out of town for a couple weeks at a time. And during one of those stretches, while I was busy juggling deadlines and living off cheap motel coffee, something started happening back home. Equipment showed up first, from what I later pieced together. Trucks, materials, crews coming and going during the day. And nobody contacted me. No letter. No notice taped to a post. Nothing slipped under the door. By the time I returned, it was already finished. I remember walking out toward the ravine that afternoon, just trying to clear my head after the drive. Right away, something fell off. The trees along the edge had been trimmed back. The ground had been leveled in places where it used to be uneven. And then I saw it. A bridge stretched clean across the gap, like it had been there for years. Wooden planks, steel supports, railings on both sides. Even decorative lantern posts lined the entrance, like someone had cared about how it looked, not just how it worked. I just stood there for a while, hands on my hips, staring at it, trying to catch up to what my eyes were telling me, because it didn't look temporary. This wasn't some shortcut thrown together overnight. It was deliberate, engineered, funded, and it was sitting right on my land. I walked its length slowly, listening to the boards creak under my boots, studying where the supports had been anchored. They hadn't just crossed a ravine. They had built directly into both sides. And one of those sides was mine. There was no question about it. I knew my boundaries down to the last fence post, even the ones that had fallen years ago. My grandfather used to walk that line with me when I was a kid, pointing things out like it mattered. Like land wasn't just something you owned. It was something you understood. So I went back inside and pulled out the old documents. Then I checked the county records online, just to be sure nothing had changed while I was gone. Ownership was still mine. No easements filed. No access rights granted. No agreements recorded. Legally, that bridge shouldn't have existed. That's when it stopped being confusing and started becoming interesting. Mistakes happen. Bad surveys, miscommunication, assumptions. But this didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like someone had made a decision and simply hoped I wouldn't push back. I didn't call anyone that day. Didn't send an email. Didn't knock on doors. I didn't even mention it to my neighbor Carl, who notices everything and always has an opinion ready. Instead, I waited, not out of hesitation, but because I wanted to see what they would do next. And they didn't disappoint. A few days later, signs started appearing near the entrances of the development. Bright, cheerful signs with bold lettering announcing the Scenic Walkway, grand opening schedule for the following weekend. There were balloons tied to posts, little flags marking the path leading toward the bridge, even a temporary arch set up like they were unveiling something important. I remember standing at the edge of my property one evening, watching a couple workers adjust one of those signs. And for a moment, it almost felt like I was the outsider, like the story had already been written, and I was just a detail nobody bothered to include. That feeling didn't last long, because the more I watched, the clearer it became. They weren't asking. They weren't checking. They had already decided this bridge was part of their community now, and by extension, my land was too. That's when I started planning. Nothing dramatic, nothing reckless, just something simple, something direct, something that would remind everyone exactly where that line still was. The morning of the grand opening, I woke up earlier than usual. The air had that quiet stillness before an event, like the world was holding its breath. I loaded a few things into the back of my truck, tools, materials I had picked up the day before, and drove down to the ravine. From a distance, everything looked ready, decorations in place, the bridge clean and inviting, like it was waiting for its first official crossing. You wouldn't have known anything was wrong. Up close, that was about to change. I parked a little ways off so I wouldn't draw attention, shut off the engine, and sat there for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, looking out at that bridge like it was a stage set, like all it needed was a crowd and a ribbon to become officially real. And I remember thinking, this is the moment. This is where it either becomes theirs or it stays mine. I stepped out, grabbed what I needed, and walked down toward the ravine. The ground was still damp from rain the night before, that soft crunch under your boots that carries farther than you expect when everything else is quiet. No one else was there yet, just decorations shifting in the breeze. A couple of folding tables set up on the other side, probably for refreshments or speeches. They really went all out. I started on my side first, measured the distance twice out of habit, then set the posts deep enough that they weren't going anywhere. I wasn't rushing, but I wasn't dragging it out either. There's a certain kind of focus that comes when you know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. No second guessing, no overthinking, just step by step. By the time the first car pulled up in the distance, I had already secured the gate frame. Solid metal, not decorative, not something you could just step around. This wasn't about style. It was about making a point that couldn't be ignored. I locked it, tested it once, then again, listening for that clean, final click. Then I walked across the bridge. I'll admit, that part felt strange. Not because I wasn't allowed to be there, but because it already felt like I was walking through something that didn't belong to me anymore, even though it absolutely did. That's the thing about perception. Once enough people believe something is theirs, it starts to feel that way, even before it's true. On the other side, I repeated the process. Same measurements, same depth, same kind of barrier. When I finished, the bridge was still there, structurally untouched, still clean, still inviting. But now it was sealed at both ends, complete but unusable, exactly the way I wanted it.